Hello everyone, this is Grandmaster Dian Boshko from Bulgaria, and this is my first YouTube video for my own private channel. Today I would like to show you the game between Dmitry Andreikin with the white pieces and Andreikin-Karjakin with the black pieces from the recently finished Grand Prix tournament in Tashkent, Uzbekistan. As you probably remember, Andreikin won this Grand Prix tournament. He was undefeated, he won 3 games, and this is one of those games. I think that this is his best effort. And the opening choice in this game was very good for him. He went at first for the Tory attack, then he chose the move knight c3, which is not a very, well, I wouldn't say that this is the most common guess at this high level, especially in conjunction with his next move, queen takes d4, which leads to very original positions that you can achieve from some other openings. Usually, most of the people are achieving this position with some weird move forward, like knight c3 on the first move. Say knight f6 and then d4 and things like that. Later in the future it can transpose to the same thing after, say, these moves. I think that Andreikin chose wisely this opening because his opponent is a very known theoretician. With the black pieces he usually goes for the Najdorf Sicilian, and against the d4 move he goes for the Nimzo Indian and Queen's Indian setups, and he knows these positions very well. While this position is a very original one, and most likely he has never even played it in blitz games. So Andreikin chose here queen to h4, intending to put some pressure on the king side with this move. Karjakin replied with the move bishop to b4, which is still keeping the game very interesting and very original. There are only very few games in this line. There is a top game played in the line, relatively top game, Grandmaster game, in which black decided immediately to challenge the bishop on g5. It is not yet hanging, but after, say, white goes e4 and black replies with rook g8, now the bishop is hanging. There is no more pin, so white decided that it's best for him to take on f6 and then to play this Sicilian type of position after long castling. This is the game Gurgenidze against Kapengut, played in Moscow 1981. Now that structure is very typical for some Sicilians. Usually in the classical Sicilian we have the setup, the pawn goes on d6, black goes 2 bishops, and this was the favorite setup of the World Championship Botvinnik. He has some really great games in this line. For example, the game against Suetin, if you have time, I advise you to have a look at it. Bishop b4, on the other hand, is very aggressive move, to which Andreikin replied with simple development with e4, and bishop c3 was, technically speaking, a novelty from the over-the-board games, to put it this way. The only predecessor here saw the move d6. But it's quite obvious that sooner or later the bishop on b4 will have to take on c3. Say, for example, bishop d3, e5, short castles, and bishop takes c3. And this was the game Ornstein against Schneider, played in Uppsala 1985. This is everything for the theory that we know so far. But anyway, the positions that arise after that are very similar to the 2 above mentioned games that I just told you. So once again, black is challenging the bishop with the move h6, and I think that this is a good move, to which white continues with the development with bishop d3, and black goes for d6, trying to build dark square blockade. This is something that I mentioned to you at the beginning. Karjakin is playing the Nimzo Indian defense, and he is familiar with this idea. Usually whenever we trade the dark squared bishop in the Nimzo Indian, and again with bishop b4 and bishop takes c3, black is trying to build the other pawns on the dark squares so that they are not obstructing his own bishop on c8, and at the same time they are trying to obstruct this bishop on g5, or eventually to trade it. Here again the bishop isn't hanging for the time being, so Andreikin has time to put some pressure on d6. That's one of the good things about the double pawns. They provide some half open files for the rooks, and naturally Andreikin takes a chance on that. To which Karjakin, just like his predecessor in this position, Kapengut played the move rook g8, and I think that this is a very strong move. It's very strong because if he castles, which is the most natural thing on earth, of course here we are going to see some of the venom behind the move rook d1. White can sacrifice the bishop on h6, and this looks very strong. It looks very strong because after the capture, this move is discovering the rook, and at the same time discovers the bishop, which is more important. So the bishop wants to go on h7 in certain moments, and the queen will be hanging on d8. The immediate queen takes h6 is also interesting, but this is even stronger. And now I would say that black is under a very, very unpleasant attack. If he captures on e5, first of all, white can win the queen if he likes with bishop h7. Although maybe this is not the thing that black was afraid of. For the queen he has a rook, a bishop and a knight. True, white is going to get some pawns, but this is not really the kind of position he would be worried about. I think that the real reason for Karjakin not getting into this position was the move queen takes h6. And now white has plenty of strong threats. The main one being knight g5 followed by bishop h7, and white is not going to go for the queen, he is going to go for the king. For example, queen e7, knight g5. Now the threat is bishop h7 check. Let's say that black does nothing, just check, king h8, and then another check. So the king has to move back to g8, and naturally white doesn't want to deliver perpetual, he wants to lift the rook, and after that deliver checkmate either on the g file or on the h8 square. It's inevitable, you can check it for yourselves. And it's quite difficult to fight an attack like that. It's very easy to miss a line, to miss a move also. It's quite understandable why Karjakin didn't go for this one. And also, objectively speaking, the attack is strong. Say that he goes e4, bishop takes e4, knight e5, bishop h7, check, king h8. And now we have some computer moves like f3, which are taking away the g4 square, or h3 again taking away the g4 square. And white wants to lift the rook anyway to attack the king unobstructed. He always has the chance to do perpetual if he wants to, just shuffling the bishop here and there. And definitely this is not very, very nice for black. Not something that he would like to see in a real game. From this point of view, the move that he chose in the game, rook to g8, was really perfectly fine. Now the bishop is hanging. White has to do something about it, and his choice in the game was bishop e3. It's not yet time to go bishop f4. There is a fork at least. The bishop on e3 is standing well, and that's the first critical moment in the game in which I believe that black should have played better. In the game he chose e5, the natural setup that we were talking about, but in white's position there is a general drawback. This is the position of the queen on h4. It was good there if black has castled for the attack, but right now it is quite limited by the black knight, as you can see. And if a pawn attacks it, it doesn't have too many squares. This square is not really perfect, as the bishop can be opened with a tempo. And well, the other squares, they are also not great. To start with queen g3 would be a move that is losing the game instantly. There will be knight h5, give me the queen. The queen has to step somewhere in this diagonal with the bishop. It doesn't really matter where the queen goes. Okay, this one is losing on the spot because of oh, actually not g4, the knight would be hanging, but well, oh, in fact, excuse me, instead of knight h5 there is the move g4 first that I forgot to insert, and only after knight e2 then there will be the move knight to h5, and the queen is trapped this time indeed. Pawn is taking the squares, the queen is controlling h4, and the knight is attacking f4, and the queen on g3 is simply trapped. So from this perspective, after g5, the safe square on g3 is not available. He has to take on h6, most likely, but if he takes ever on h6, there is perpetual attack against the queen. It doesn't really matter where the queen goes, if it goes on h5 or on h7, there is no big difference. The knight will attack the queen over and over again, and that would be perpetual perpetual attack, free time repetition, and a draw. I'm not sure if Andreikin wanted to do something else here. I suspect not. There is an alternative. He can take on g5 if he wants to and sacrifice a piece temporarily, and now he is spinning this knight. But I suspect that here the cool rook takes g5 wouldn't be something that black should be afraid. He has two light pieces for rook and two pawns. True, these pawns can become dangerous once that white starts pushing them. But on the other hand, I believe that the pieces should be capable of surviving this. Say bishop d7, then queen comes on e7, he castles long, the rook is coming on g8. Definitely not something that black should be worried about. So this is moment number 1 in the game where Karjakin could have played better. And the move that he played was also natural and okay. e5, to which Andreikin played bishop b5. He's discovering the road for the rook. He's putting pressure on e5. Concretely, he is threatening to capture on c6 and then on e5, as there is a pin on the queen on d8, or immediately to capture on e5, because there are two pins against the king and the queen. And this means that black has to move away the queen. Queen c7 he played, and that's probably the second inaccuracy in the game. I believe that queen a5 was the right thing to do, putting immediate pressure on white's position before he manages to castle, and then white has to trade one of his bishops, after which he doesn't have time to capture the pawn. There'll be queen takes c3 check, and after bishop a6 it will be the white king that is in danger rather than the black one on g8, on e8. And if he doesn't have time to take the pawn on d6, then this means that the only other reasonable thing that he can do is to castle. But then bishop a6 wins the tempo for the development. Rook has to move away, and black manages just in time to bring the rook out to defend the pawn on d6, and he has quite a solid position, I believe. This pawn is fixed at the moment. It is not going anywhere, and well, black can be happy about his position. If the pawn is not moving to c4, then nobody is going to attack his king anytime soon. So definitely he can look forward in the future. True, this rook is not yet very well placed, but little by little black can try to untangle it. Maybe he can try castling by hand with king e7, then rook to e8, then king f8 later, etc. But also white has his own problems with the pawns on c3, c2, a2. The pawn on e4 eventually is also a target after queen a4, and I wouldn't be surprised that this queen on h4 is not quite well placed at the moment. For instance, this trick is not working, as after rook h8 there is a pin. The queen is not too well placed on h4. Otherwise white would have won a pawn. This line is good for him, but unfortunately the queen on h4 is standing badly. Alright, but all of this did not happen in the game. Queen c7 was played, to which knight d2 was the reply. This is very nice regrouping. The threat is knight c4, and the pawn on d6 would be hanging. Bishop came to e6, and f3 is an important move in white's setup. He intends to bring the queen on f2, after which it can work on the queen's flank. That would be, for instance, his reply in case of long castling. There will be an attack against the king, but nevertheless I believe that black should have gone for that long castle now. Long castle was another way to equalize, probably in this situation. It looks a little bit difficult for black, a little bit scary, as now this opposite castlings usually the one who is faster wins. But it seems to me that black is doing fine after the central blow with d5. If he manages to get the initiative in the center, everything will be fine. There'll be no attack on the side. Well, on the other hand, please note that in this situation white doesn't have time to take the pawn on a7 with bishop c6, queen c6, because if bishop a7, the bishop would be trapped. It got separated from his own pieces, and it's an easy prey for the black ones. So That's probably the last inaccuracy in the game that was played in this moment. Actually, not the last. Queen e5 is still inaccuracy, I think, and after c4 we see the real problem in the game. Karjakin decided to go for king e7, which is a very typical idea in the Lithuanian defense, but not right here, not quite here, as the king will stay into the middle. What is happening after that you're about to see in the next video. So thank you for your attention and stay tuned for the next one.